Welcome to Fear No Evil. Psalm 77. I cried out to God with my voice, and he gave ear to me. In the day of my trouble I sought the Lord. My hand was stretched out in the night without ceasing. My soul refused to be comforted. I remembered God and was troubled. I complained, and my spirit was overwhelmed. You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I've been doing many videos on sexual harassment. I've given my opinion on how I feel the mainstream media is handling it. I have also done videos on my beliefs that homosexuality has a connection to child sexual abuse. And I'm certainly not done with any of that. But first and foremost, I'm a Christian. Second, a child sexual abuse survivor. And so I thought I would do a video just for the sexual abuse survivors. And I opened up my Bible and I read Psalm 77. Because that's what it feels like as you are a child. Many children believe in God automatically. People think that we're indoctrinated with it. People think that someone told us to believe in Jesus. When they say these things, they're not understanding that when you enter into a relationship with Jesus, it is completely and totally voluntary. Nobody makes you give your life over to Jesus. It is a personal decision that you make, and you can make it at any age, despite what Christians want to say. Many Christians believe that children cannot be saved, that they cannot give their lives over to Christ until they're 12 years old. I'm not sure where they get this from. However, it's not true. You can give your life to Christ by saying the prayer at any time. And so I cried out to God with my voice, and he gave ear to me. Now, I'm older now, so I do know that every time I cried out to God during any type of abuse, that he did give ear to me. Except as a child, I did not believe he was giving his ear to me. I believed that he was ignoring me and allowing the abuse to continue, which as I matured, I realized that was a lie. In the day of my trouble, I sought the Lord. I have sought the Lord many times because when you are healing from sexual abuse, you have many days of trouble. You have many good days as well. But we cannot negate the fact that for any child sexual abuse survivor, your days of trouble are going to be many. And I have sought the Lord in every one of those days. Because when you're being sexually abused, there's nobody around but the perpetrator and you. And so because I had given my life to the Lord at such a young age, I would always cry out to him. And in other ways, I would just go on with my life. And maybe that's how he gave ear to me. My hand was stretched out in the night without ceasing. My soul refused to be comforted. I'm sure I'm not the only sexual abuse survivor who would go to bed crying and you don't even know why you're crying. You'd wake up crying and you don't even know why you're crying. There are many days when our souls cannot be comforted. And unfortunately, in those days, you still have to go through the emotion. You still have to feel what you forgot. You still have to process those emotions and then integrate them into the proper place in your life. Now, because I was a Christian, as I got older, I remembered God and I was troubled. I was troubled because I was a child and I couldn't understand why an all-loving God would allow sexual abuse. And then if I complained, my spirit was overwhelmed. Now, I'm not saying that we cannot complain when it comes to sexual abuse, but I am saying that we can't get stuck in that. When you get stuck in the complaining that it happened to you, that's where we get caught. And I remember crying out to the Lord, why would you let this happen to me? And the Lord simply said to me, would you want somebody else to go through this? And that is when I realized, no, I would not want anybody else to go through this. So now in my life, I do whatever I can to inform and educate other people on child sexual abuse. Because if I can prevent or help one person, then all the pain that I went through is not in vain. There were many days that the Lord had to hold my eyelids open. I was so troubled that I couldn't speak. There's your silence. The child sexual abuse survivor is so troubled. And the main thing that child sexual abuse takes is your voice, your ability to communicate with other people. And that happens on a lot of levels. But the first level it happens to is the child sexual abuse survivor. That the heart is so troubled that you cannot speak. And that's why many child sexual abuse survivors don't speak, don't report it, and keep it to themselves. But unfortunately, when we keep this inside of ourselves, there are a lot of manifestations that we go through that we don't necessarily have to go through. And so, since the mainstream media and society is so ignorant when it comes to child sexual abuse, it's our obligation as child sexual abuse survivors to begin speaking out so that we can start educating those who are behind us, who are being sexually abused, and start connecting with those who are adults now who have been sexually abused. Because although our manifestations and the way we process things may be very individual and very different, the common ground of being a sexual abuse survivor is you're going to feel some unbearable pain. And those of us who have been able to, I can't bear that pain. I've given it to God. Now, I don't tell everybody to give it to God because I'm going to respect where they are. But at the same time, I don't know how they handle it without giving it to God. Because it's a pain that is so crushing and so mind-blowing that I couldn't handle it. I had to give it back to God. And when I gave it back to God, our journey began. And I am so thankful that I gave it to God. So I encourage those who are sexual abuse survivors, if you have a relationship with God, turn around and give it all right back to God. All your anger, all your frustration, all your questions, all your complaints, give it all back to Him. He's big enough to handle it. And because you are individually made and wonderfully made, He also knows what you individually need on your journey to healing. And as we all make this valley, pilgrimage, if you want to say, to the valley of the shadow of death, death only becomes a shadow. It doesn't become a reality. And so all of us need to reach our hands out to sexual abuse survivors because we're all that we have. We don't have the psychological community. We don't have mainstream media. Most of us don't even have our families. But what we do have is that experience, that light. And that's why I always use light of some kind. Because you need light in this kind of darkness. Be blessed, survivors. Keep going. Do not give up.